Okay, so Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to this session. Formally, we have been discussing about this session for a long time. Alhamdulillah, we are starting this now formally. So this session is about applying to Ivy League and the surprising lessons that we have from the two Harvard graduates that Alhamdulillah we have on this session. So my name is Talal Hussain. I'm from Chaajao Technologies, and I have with me two esteemed guests that we have live from USA. And it's brother Hamza, who is the founder and the head coach at Five Before College, and he obviously is a Harvard graduate. And then we have brother Abdul Rahman, who is again a Harvard graduate, and he is the founder of the company Algebra. So I'll be talking to you guys for the first 4 to 5 minutes, and then I'll be handing over this session to the esteemed guests that we have, and just have to discuss a little bit about Chaajao Technologies so that you guys can have an overview about it, and then we'll move on to the real thing, and we'll discuss how you guys can actually get into the Ivy League and all the elite different colleges, how you can make your admission process and applications stand out. So our guests will help you with that. So firstly, obviously, I just want to talk about, can we move on? So Chaajao Technologies is basically an online platform of IBA grads. IBA grads is a test prep company. We have been providing, test prep solutions to students for the past 23, 24 years. We have been helping them with their SATs. We have been helping them with their other universities entrance tests as well. And we try our best to, help our students and get them to the universities that they desire for, so that, they can make a future for themselves. So that is what we have been doing. The digital start program that we have is primarily based on we have products basically. The first is our live classes. That is obviously the flagship program that we have, where we have live interaction one-on-one with the teacher and in the group classes as well, where we discuss all the different components on the SAT and help students guide with their questions, and try our best to get help the students get the scores that they really want. Then we also have the recorded course, right, where we have all the topics. We have everything from the SAT to help the students get to where they want. And this is what we believe is one of the best things that students can have to prepare for the SAT. Then we have the practice zone as well, because there are many students that I have who ask me how can we really get that improvement, right? So for score improvement, obviously it's very important to do your practice. So we have this practice zone in which we have thousands of questions, and all the questions they will obviously give you real-time simulation of the SAT, since the SAT has now gone digital, and all of these questions have video solutions as well, right? So if there is any question that you are faltering on, if there's any question that you do not understand how to go with it, we have video solution for all the questions. So you can just solve those questions and watch the video solution if you're faltering or stopping anywhere. So these are the three products that we have, and Alhamdulillah, we have been helping students, like I told you, for the past 24 years. So we know all the pitfalls that normally students have, the problems that the students they have. We help them with that. Minam, can we go ahead? And this is how our live classes they look like. If you go for our live classes, you'll have not only the classes, you'll have the recordings, you'll have the study material, you'll have the practice zone that we talked about. So basically you'll have everything that you need to ace your SAT. And it's not it's not only about the classes. Along with the classes, we have been producing results as well. And this is what I would really want to talk about in a while. So it's the number of questions that we have for the quantitative and for the reading and writing. And with these questions and all of it, students have practiced a lot, and they have achieved their scores, and they have gotten those top scores as well. And many of them have gotten to top universities as well. So these are the scores. Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of scores that are there in the 1500s, and then we have multiple scores in 1400s as well. And then there are we have 8 students who have had perfect scores in either reading and writing or in their quantitative parts. So that is how it is. And then we have 31 students in total who have a score of more than 1400. So that's a pretty substantial score for someone, who wants to get into top universities. So, you can download our application, you can use our LMS. We'll provide the link to our application and the LMS in the description. And if you want to, use that and practice for the SAT and go for the live classes or the practice zone, you can always contact us. But without further ado, I will now move on to what this session is all about. Like we promised you that we'll talk to you about how you can get into the Ivy League, how you can get into the elite colleges of the world. And for that, we have, like I told you, two of our guests who have actually graduated from those elite colleges, who have graduated from Harvard. So without further ado, I would, hand over to Brother Hamza and Brother Abdul Rahman. So you guys can, take it over and talk to our participants and tell them how they can, get into Ivy League and the top universities. Brother Hamza. Mic mute.
Sorry, I'm having some Zoom problems. Abdurrahman, could you try?
Would you like me to share my slides? I see your slides.
Sorry, I'm back. I don't know, Zoom unexpectedly quit at the worst possible time. Okay. Alhamdulillah, I'm back. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to doing it again. Abdurrahman, sorry, could you
I see you. Oh, it says
okay, so it's okay. It keeps saying Zoom quit. I don't know. I just got a new computer yesterday, so I apologize. This is the first.
This is the first surprising lesson.
The first surprising lesson that your elite education does not save you from tech issues. Okay. So welcome to this. We're really excited. Abdurrahman and I are old friends, and it's always a pleasure to see him spend some time and reminisce a little bit about our college days, and also help all of you as you're going through this this process. I was wondering, before we get too far along, could you guys just put your name in the chat and then maybe your age or your grade, just so I have a sense of who's with us today. So just put your name and what grade you're in, or yeah. So if you're able to use the chat, let's see what we got. So Gurmeet, 12th grade, mashallah. So we have senior Abdul Hafiz.
And
so remember to put your.
You're joining from.
Excuse me.
Also, what city you're joining from?
Oh yeah, that would be helpful. What city you're joining from? So we have 12th grade, mashallah. Rawalpindi, okay. Faisalabad, Karachi, 12th grade, mashallah. Islamabad, alhamdulillah. Well, these Karachi folks, this is that's your territory, right, Abdurrahman?
Yes, it is.
Ooh, Hyderabad. Is that Hyderabad, Pakistan, I assume? Karachi, more Karachi, mashallah. Okay, so we have some different ages, but a lot of 12th graders. Okay. Interesting. Okay, mashallah. Mashallah. Great. So very ooh, is that Chicago and Harvard sophomore? Alhamdulillah, mashallah. I'm confused by that. You're in 11th grade and you're a Harvard sophomore? Inshallah. But that would be cool. Okay, let's I'm gonna switch over, but that's really interesting, great context for us to know who's out there in the audience. So let me talk a little bit about myself. I call myself a Mayflower Muslim. Alhamdulillah, I became Muslim in 1994 at the age of 15. I was at a boarding school outside of Boston. I can tell you a little bit more about the story later on. And went on to Harvard. If we could turn off the inshallah, I'll let brother Salah.
You're getting immediate feedback, mashallah.
Yeah. Yeah. This reminds me of the early days of Zoom when this sort of thing was common. Brother Talal, is there a way for you to
Yeah,
disable?
we're just
Okay,
sorting it
I've
out.
disabled the annotations. I don't know if I can erase the annotations. Do you know how to do that? Let me stop sharing. Oop, and share again. So, obviously, Abdurrahman and I are taking some time out of our busy schedules, so please, don't try to not disrupt the Zoom in that kind of way. All right. So, as I was saying, graduated from Harvard in 2001 with a degree in Near Eastern languages and civilizations. The Mayflower Muslim is that my ancestry on both my mother and father's side actually stretches back to the first European settlers who came to the United States, who came on the Mayflower, the Pilgrims, as you may have studied about. And so, in other words, my family's been in this country for a long time. I know America's a very young country compared to Pakistan and so on, but still 400 years here is unusual. I've been in the field of education for more than 20 years. I worked for a good chunk of that time at a full-time Islamic school here outside of Boston. And in that role, I wore many hats, but one of them was as a college counselor. And alhamdulillah, I've helped place hundreds of Muslims in many of the country's top colleges. So many Muslims who go to places like Harvard and MIT and Brown and Johns Hopkins and all the very, very well-known American universities. So about 2 years, I decided to start my own educational consultancy, which is called 5 Before College, to help Muslim teenagers get into their college of their dreams, inshallah, but also to launch them towards success in this world and the next. So this is, it's a mixture of college counseling, but also more life coaching and helping Muslim teenagers really get in touch with their deen and use that as a means of college success. I'm also a writer. A few years ago, I wrote 30 college essays of my own, yeah, I think that's about that for me. Let's turn it over to Abdurrahman.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. So 5 facts about Abdurrahman. What have I written here? I'm originally from Karachi, born and raised. If you divide my life in thirds, the first third of my life was spent in Pakistan. I went to a small school called the Karachi American School. I applied and was accepted to Harvard in 1995 on early action. Happy to talk more about that. My professional credentials, I think, are less relevant to this audience, but I am a brand strategist. I'm a communication expert, which is to say I help people, companies, and communities improve their communication and professional branding. I started a small firm in Dubai called Algebra, and we work with clients, in particular Islamic corporates, startups, and nonprofits on their brand strategy, on their communication strategy, on their strategy, and their governance. I also have a visiting faculty member position at the Karachi School of Business and Leadership, where I teach management communication.
MashaAllah. Very impressive background. So we wanted to put together a few slides from some are throwback slides from our time in college, and most of them actually are more recent because we didn't have access to quite as many of the older slides. You can see me here, this picture where I'm wearing a tuxedo. The guy standing next to me in that picture, his name is Nabil, and he factors quite heavily in my story. He's the one who introduced me to Islam. So that building behind me is the boarding school where I became Muslim, and Nabil was the first Muslim I really met who introduced me to Islam and helped me become Muslim. The graduation picture, that is my graduation. I managed to dig that one up, my Harvard graduation. And interestingly, I didn't remember this, but it looks like I was wearing a kafia, which is now in, with Gaza and so much in the news. There are quite a few people have done that, so I'd forgotten that. Abdurrahman, you wanna talk about some of the other pictures?
Yeah. So if you look at the bottom, the second picture between two of Hamza's pictures is that of Widener Library. So Widener, and more generally Harvard's libraries, constitute the largest university library system in the world. And that's their reading room. That's an iconic image from those who have a chance to visit or attend Harvard. So is the one on the bottom left. That's one of the river houses. Hamza lived in a river house. I lived in what used to be Radcliffe Quadrangle until I think 1976, if I'm not mistaken. The women studied separately and lived separately from the men at Harvard. Men went to Harvard College and women went to Radcliffe College. After the two were combined, some of the residential houses in Radcliffe Quad, and that's where I lived, and some of the residential houses were on the river, which is where Hamza lived. So that gives you sort of a glimpse of both the academic and residential life at Harvard. The picture where I'm at the door was actually my first year dormitory doorway. I remember walking in, and I just thought of this, Hamza. I had two roommates, and the first thing you get when you get into a university, very often in the States, you'll get some information to prepare you for the journey. And I got information about my two roommates. One was Brian, and the other was Ohas Tehani, O-J-A-S, Ohas, and Tehani was T-E-J-A-N-I. So I expected meeting, someone who's a Latino, Latin American from the U.S. or perhaps South or Central America. And I just, as soon as I walked in, I see this Indian family. Turns out it wasn't Ohas Tehani, it was Ojis Tejani. So he was a Jan from Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Brian was from upstate New York. So that's a memory from my first year. I had the chance to go back for my 25th year reunion. So several of the photos here are from my 25th year reunion. And that's one of them where I went back to see my first year dormitory. Right next to that, if you see the carpet, that's actually the musalla for the Harvard Islamic Society. Really, I think the Harvard Islamic Society for both Hamza and myself played a key role in our undergraduate experience. And this is something that's often overlooked. Right now, you're focused on academics and you want to go to X or Y university because you want to get in the best academic university as possible and then do well beyond that. But a big part of university life is actually your social life and your time spent in good company. And we spent a lot of time together in good company at the Harvard Islamic Society. That was in the basement. Someone's asking me to speak louder. Sure, I'll come in closer and speak more loudly. So that was also in a dormitory, in the basement of a dormitory. So if you look carefully, there's a little bit of light at the top of that bookcase. That's the light coming in from the ground level. Because the musalla or prayer room, we didn't have a masjid at Harvard. There's still no masjid, but the prayer room was in the basement. And ye baad mein laga hai, you see the iron curtain was put in later. So very often student groups have to make do with the spaces that are made available to them. So it gives you a sense of both things. One, both how important social life is in the part of your university experience, but also you need to adjust your expectations as an international student from a Muslim country about what facilities may be available to you. Can I speak in Urdu? Urdu meri kachi hai. I'm happy to speak in Urdu, but I know that Hamza will prefer English and some of the people on the webinar will also speak English. So थोड़ी बहुत उर्दू मैं चलाते रहूँगा. And then you'll see the other photographs here. When we came back for the reunion, the one next to the musalla is Ali Hassan and myself. I included this picture because Ali and I were the two students at our year at Harvard. So when I entered in 1995, out of a year of 1,600 students, the only two from Pakistan. Those of you who are familiar with Senator Ehtizaz Ehsan, Ali is his son. And those of you who are familiar with 𝐻𝐚 College, Ali was a graduate of 𝐻𝐚 and I was a graduate of Karachi American School. So we had one Lahori and one Karachiite the same year at Harvard. And then the ones at the end reflect some of our friends, and we can talk about that, I think, what's happened sort of over the course of our lives. But the top right is when I brought my children back to get a glimpse of my university life. Hamza, back to you.
Right. Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure everyone can hear. Could you just put in the chat if you're able to hear me okay? Abdurrahman's welcome to speak some Urdu, but my Urdu is Toro Toro. I'm gonna have to stick with English, unfortunately.
Hamza, if you don't mind, I know you spent some time with the Tablighi Jamaat. Can you share some of your Urdu from your Tablighi days?
Okay, so this is the Ailan after Salat. Sari ki sari kamyabi dunya aur akhiraji Allah ni apni deen mein rakhi hai. बाकी नमाज की बात दीन की बात होगी बहुत फायदा होगा तशरीफ रख. So alhamdulillah that used to get the people to stay after the salat. So yeah, we need to move on to stay on time with this, but these are some of our friends. Mashallah, this picture on a log was after the 25th reunion. These are all friends, mashallah, very, very close Muslim friends, Amir, Bilal, Abdurrahman, and myself. And mashallah, they've gone on to very, very impressive careers. Both have founded companies. Actually, all four of us have founded companies, and inshallah, doing a lot of khair. And all of us are connected in one way or another to the Islamic economy, Islamic world, uplifting the ummah in different ways. So I think that's, one of the main messages here is that, obviously getting into these schools is great, but you need to have a niyyah beyond just enriching yourself and so on. You really want to have a niyyah of, trying to get to these top colleges because you really want to help the ummah as a whole. So let's move on. So as I mentioned, I founded a company called 5 Before College, and 5 Before College really has there's two reasons for that name. The first is that the time to start preparing for college is not your junior or senior year. So I know there are a lot of seniors here, a lot of 17-year-olds and so on. And so it's not to say that you don't have a chance, but the best people I saw, there were some 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds. That's really the time where you need to start laying the groundwork for this, right? So if you have younger siblings, if there are parents on this call and so on, the message is if you really want to be a competitive candidate for these top schools, they really look at the 4 years of high school, and you need to really start laying that groundwork early on. The second part of the 5 Before College name is based on the famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, "Ightanimu khamsan qabla khams," take benefit of 5 before 5. So Rasulullah ﷺ was giving us comprehensive advice about how to maximize our time here in the dunya. So he said, take benefit of your youth before your old age, your health before sickness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your busyness, and your life before your death. Right? So, mashallah, beautiful hadith, but it also maps onto the high school experience. What are you supposed to do during those 5 years leading up to high school? Rasulullah is giving us guidance. So the first thing, youth before old age, when you are young, your full-time job is to be a student, right? You are a full-time student, and the way students are measured is by academics, by their GPA, by their SAT scores, all the things that you would probably expect. Now, I'll tell you that those things are necessary, but not sufficient by any means for entry into these top colleges. But if you don't have them, you really don't have a chance. And the key to academics, the key to standing out, the people who do go off to these top universities, almost all of them are voracious readers. They read a lot, not just books like all the books behind me. They read articles. They're just interested in the world, curiosity is the hallmark of people who go to these top universities. They want to know more about how things work. Health before sickness. It's not enough just to focus on your mind. You also have to focus on your body, right? Playing sports, playing cricket, doing things like that, especially at a competitive level, can be very, very helpful in the course of your college application. I played football, American football, and tennis. And although I didn't go on to play those sports at Harvard, they were incredibly beneficial for me in terms of building my character and so on. And also wellness. This is mental health, having daily practices that allow you to be in touch with yourself. I go on an hour long or more walk every single day, and that's where I do my best thinking. And so on. So when teenagers have these types of practices in their lives, they're much more impressive. We have wealth before poverty. This is, high school is a time to explore your possible careers, right? The high school is a time to I don't know how it works in Pakistan as well, but to potentially get internships, to be shadowing professionals, to find out more about what you might want to do ultimately with your college degree. It's also a time to seek out scholarships, to try to figure out how to pay for college, because obviously, these colleges are, very expensive, and so thinking about that. Your free time before your busyness. Colleges look very closely at how your extracurriculars, the things you do outside of your academic classes, is one of the main things they look at in the application. And then your friendships, right? You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So are your friends uplifting you? Are they optimistic people who believe in you and are trying to make something of their lives? Are they people who remind you of Allah, right? Or are they people who pull you down, right? With someone like Abdurrahman has been an incredible blessing for me and all of those Harvard folk. We don't get to see each other as often. We all are very busy with our own lives and so on. They are incredible people who teach me how to be a better Muslim and how to do better in business and all sorts of things. So the friendships you make at this age are incredibly. And finally, life before death. This is the talk about our akhlaq, our character, and our deen, our faith, right? That ultimately these if we have the qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we will be an outstanding college candidate. Abdurrahman, do you have any brief reflections on this?
I don't, except to say that frameworks are often helpful to structure your thinking. So you can treat this, however practical a benefit it may have. So you can treat it as a checklist. Okay, do I have this? Do I have this? Do I have this? Actually, I don't have this, so what can I do to work on this? You can treat this as inspiration. You can choose to focus on one particular thing that, okay, this is what I'm going to dive into. So different ways to use the framework, but it's helpful to have a framework to work from. So thank you, Hamza, for sharing that.
That's great. And alhamdulillah, this 5 before college framework really does work. These are some of the schools that our students have gone off to. And there are many, many more. We couldn't fit them all in one slide. But in other words, this isn't a theory. This is a tested system. But while we're here on this slide, Abdurrahman, I wanted to just ask you a question. Why do you think you, as a Pakistani international student, why do you think you got into Harvard yourself?
Okay, so you're asking me to go back 30 years. And of course, the answers may vary to some degree today than they did back then. And you're in a better position, I think, to judge for that. So please adjust where you think things have changed. In my own case, I went to, as I mentioned, the Karachi American School. I was familiar with the system, and I think that played to my advantage. Most schools in Pakistan are not on the American school system. If they're on the British school system, for example, that may be an advantage to go to university in the UK. Being on the American school system was an advantage going to the US. Really, for as simple a reason as we had a guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor, when I was in the 10th grade, encouraged me to apply to Harvard. And I thought, yeah, Harvard, no one gets into Harvard. क्या फायदा बेकार की बातें हैं. But the fact that you have someone there to encourage you and help you navigate that system, they're all, things that come sort of by default to people who are studying in the US that people in Pakistan may not know. So I think that was an advantage. I also went to a small school, so it's easier to be a big fish in a small pond. Though I did well academically, I was a nerd. But I also chose to play sports, and I did well among nerds on the sports field. But because it was a small school, it was easy to sort of be good at everything and develop a nice profile. So I wasn't first in my class, so I don't think you have to be first in your class. I didn't get a 1600 SAT. At that time, it was like 1600. I don't know what the current scoring is.
Yeah,
so you don't have to.
1600 still.
It's still 16. Did it go back down to 16?
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, TK. So back to 16. So I didn't have a perfect SAT score. I wasn't valedictorian in my class. I came in second in my class. I had a good GPA. I did a wide range of activities. And really, I think if I had to pick one thing, Hamza, you and I have spoken about this before. It's odd, but I think it was my essays. And the reason I mention that is because when I was a first-year student at Harvard, my proctor, which is to say the person who was our supervisor on our residential floor in our dormitory, she also worked in the admissions office. And she said to us generally, I'm not speaking about any of us, that 60% of the people who apply to Harvard, अच्छा ये 1995 की बात है, हाँ? तो 30 साल पुरानी बात है ये. 60%, 60% of the people who apply to Harvard are qualified to get in. Right? So I don't know if this is anecdotal. I don't know if it was statistically sound. Hamza, you may have your own figures or perspective on that. She said the challenge is how to get down from 60 to at that time was 11%. And it's more competitive today than it was then. And what is it that's going to separate you from the other 60% who have the minimum academic qualifications? I think in my case, it was the essays. I wrote strong essays, which is to say you have to be strong in language, but I think I told an interesting story. And I can go into that in more detail if you like. But really, among other things, I think that's what it came down for me.
Right. Yeah, and as someone again who does this for a living, the essays are incredibly important. It's one of the places where you can really have a big influence, and it's a different type of writing. But as another framework, more of a visual framework, if you look at this picture, pretty much there's only one thing that most people their eye is drawn towards, and that is the red umbrella, right? The black umbrellas, because they all look the same, they fade into the background. And this is the nature of applying to top tier universities, right? The current acceptance rate at Harvard is somewhere around 4%, 5%. Right, so I've never counted the number of umbrellas in this particular picture, which but it's pretty similar to that. And so the reality is, as Abdurrahman said, 60% of those umbrellas are qualified. They have the grades, they have the SAT scores, they have all that, but only one of them is going to actually get in. And that is because that person has some sort of quality which helps them stand out from the pack, that helps them be one of a kind, helps their application jump off the page from the pack of applications that they have. And so your goal, if you want to remember one thing from this, is to figure out how you can be that red umbrella. And I would say this is true not just for getting into Harvard or another top American university. This is true for everything in your life. If you want to stand out and be an outlier, you need to figure out what is your thing. What is the thing that you are uniquely suited to be world class in? And in terms of figuring that out, this is another great framework. I guess this is a day of frameworks. This is called the Ikigai. This is a Japanese concept. And your ikigai is your reason for being, your purpose. And the ikigai exists at the center of 4 overlapping circles. So you may be familiar with the Venn diagram. I often describe this as a Venn diagram on steroids. It's a hardcore Venn diagram. So the 4 overlapping circles are what you love, what you are good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. What you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for and paid well for, inshallah, and what the world needs. If you can find something in that center of that diagram, then you can stand out. You can stand out and be the red umbrella in your college applications, but you can also stand out in your professional lives. And I'll just give a quick example of myself. You know, as I said, when I first began, actually, I don't think I mentioned this. I started in the field of Islamic finance. Actually, both Abdurrahman and I did. You know, so I started in the field of Islamic finance. So in the field of Islamic finance, it was definitely something that you could be paid for. Alhamdulillah, that's one of the reasons why I did it. It's something the world needs. You know, I think that you know, we need more of that. And I don't think I was great at it because I didn't spend as much time in it, but I was certainly adequate in it. However, it was not something that I loved. I did not enjoy going to work. I was talking about, you know, money all day, and it didn't really align. I was more of a humanities person, and I was in more of a you know, a numbers-based field, and there was no philosophy, there was no education, there was no inspiration. So it didn't quite fit my ikigai. It was a profession, but it wasn't my calling. Then I switched over to education. In education, I was doing something that I loved. I absolutely love being with students and inspiring them. It's my favorite thing to do. Inshallah, I was good at it, and I've spent a lot of time in that field, so I've honed my craft. It's definitely something the world needs, especially when I switched over to an Islamic school, and I felt like I was helping the next generation of Muslims. However, the issue with education, as I'm sure you guys know, is that you don't get paid very well for it, right? You know, obviously as a Harvard graduate, you can make lots and lots of money. It was never a huge priority for me. And that's why I was willing to sort of follow my heart and do these other things. But ultimately it catches up with you. I have children of my own. I have to send them off to college. And so this is when I decided to switch over and start my own company. And once I started my own company, alhamdulillah, you know, the amount of, you know, the revenue and income picks way up, and I'm really finally at the center of that ikigai, and it's something that I can go all in on and spend hours and hours every day and never get tired. So if you're able to find your ikigai, the earlier you're able to find that, the more successful you're going to be, the more red umbrella like you're going to be in terms of your application. So Abdurrahman, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So first of all, this ikigai is not an English word. Which language is it from?
Japanese.
Japanese. Okay, take it. No, this is a very powerful framework. I think we could spend a lot of time on it. Let me make a couple of points. One point that Hamza made is that the more you are in the center, the more powerful it is. This applies, yes, to admissions, but it also applies to life. It applies to admissions because it helps you stand out from the crowd. And that's something also I shared a couple of titles. Purple Cow by Seth Godin. Any of you who follow marketing, Seth Godin is a marketing guru, and he wrote a book called Purple Cow on this concept of standing out from the crowd that's worth looking at. And out of you who may be familiar with the name Malcolm Gladwell, he looks at what is it that, you know, outsized performers have in common. So this is something that'll help you stand out, but also help serve you in life over the long term. So that's the first point I want to make. The second is Pakistan में अक्सर हमारी सोच ये होती है कि what am I good at that I can be paid for? That's what we call a profession. And we don't look beyond the profession. And those of us who look beyond the profession, our parents shut us up. यार बेटा पैसे कैसे बनेंगे? Right? ये फालतू की बातें. So we get either we stay within or we get locked within this profession piece. And what Hamza is trying to push you is to look beyond the profession piece, not only for your own satisfaction, but in fact, the more passionate you will be about what you choose to do in life, the more successful you'll be at it. And the more successful, these things are mutually reinforcing. Though it may be, short-sighted to think, yeah, what can I be paid for that I'm good at? Because you're not going to be best at the world at it if the only thing you get out of it is a paycheck, all right? So you need to think about what else you get out of it. So that's the second point. The final point I want to make is that, yes, I think it's great if you can find something in the center like Hamza has. And those are good examples, Hamza, for sharing. But sometimes you can also split it as a day job versus a night job. It may well be that what you love and what the world needs, which is to say is a mission, that complements what you're good at and what you can paid for. So your profession is your day job, and then your mission is your night job. There's nothing wrong with that model. So there's no one way to use this framework, at least in my view. You can have a profession as a day job and a mission as a night job. Or you can find your ikigai and it's at the intersection of all four. But these are really important questions to ask yourself. And don't ask when you're as old as Hamza and I are. Ask yourself now, all right? And then let that be seen or let that shine through your admissions profile. So the people on the other side of the admissions desk can see कि यार ये बच्चा सोच क्या है. He's not just repeating answers that he thinks we want to hear.
Right. Yeah, I really wish I could go back in time and have someone give me this framework and let me start thinking about it earlier, and so on. It looks like in the chat some people are really asking for more Urdu, and that's not something that I can provide. I would say if you're interested in these top universities and the SAT English section, it's good for you to practice listening here. I don't know if we could turn on subtitles or anything, if that would help, but in any case, let's yep, sorry.
We can ask Talal. Talal, would you prefer that Hamza continue in English and I switch to Urdu?
Sorry, I say something?
I'm asking, given the feedback that some people want more Urdu, would you prefer that Hamza continue in English and I switch to Urdu?
Yeah,
or should we both continue in English?
I think we can do that, but I think there are a couple of people who want to do that. So you can go maybe bilingual and Brother Hamza can continue as it is.
TikTok.
TikTok. Not TikTok. TikTok is different and TikTok is different.
Yeah. Okay, so once you've sort of worked towards finding that ikigai, finding that thing, that intersection, then in terms of becoming a truly outstanding college candidate, what you want to do is you want to create a passion project that's based on that ikigai, that's based on that mission that you have. So this picture here is one of my students, who is now at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. So during the pandemic, she started tutoring some girls in Kashmir. And she would wake up at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, get online on Zoom. She started with just 1 or 2 students, and gradually it spread, and so many people wanted to do this. So eventually, the interest became so much that she had hundreds of students. So she had to recruit other people from her high school to help with this tutoring, and so on. And she eventually founded an organization called the 𝐸𝐻𝐾𝐚A Foundation. And they started doing work not just on Zoom with Kashmir, but also in their own backyard. She was from Pennsylvania, and they started working with refugees and other people. So when she applied to college, she had an extracurricular activity that no one else had. She was the founder of this very successful organization. As a teenager, she was doing amazing things, and that really helped her stand out. So in my teaching, one of the programs that I run is called Find Your Qibla, which is about helping students find their qibla, their ikigai, that passion, and then build a project around it. So actually, Abdurrahman's daughter, Isra, was one of my students in the very first cohort that I did of this, and she came up with an amazing idea of she loves well, I should let you talk more about your own daughter, but she loves gardening, she loves the environment, and obviously, inshallah, she loves Islam as well. So she wants to build a urban garden in Detroit, a place where the economy is not very strong, and she wants to grow fruits and vegetables mentioned in the Quran and eventually sort of sell them in a farmer's market and so on. It's a beautiful, beautiful project, which I think would really help her stand out. Obviously, the key is the execution. It's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to push it forward. Another student is interviewing the elderly at a nursing home and sharing their stories on Instagram, on YouTube, on writing a blog about it, and it's called the Elder Wisdom Project, of sharing the wisdom of our elders. I'm starting a small other business with my son called Halal Jerky Boys. There's beef jerky, halal jerky is very difficult to get in this country, and so it's sort of a fun passion project for us to do. Sorry, Abdurrahman, with you, were there any how typical a candidate do you think you were from Pakistan? Do you think like your situation applies to the people that we have in our audience?
Okay, so let me say a little bit about this slide and then answer your question.
I'll be right back, inshallah. Yes.
Sure. So the question Hamza asked me is, how typical were you a candidate? So let me repeat, मैंने पहले क्या कहा था. I went to a school called Karachi American School. Karachi American School, Karachi में American School है, as the name suggests. छोटा सा school है. और जो रईसों के बच्चे होते हैं, उमरा के बच्चे वहाँ जाते हैं. It was, and when I went there, Karachi Grammar School was the second most expensive school. And I think now there's more elite schools in Karachi. And the American school is 5 times more expensive than the grammar school. Now, the Karachi Grammar School is a wonderful institution and it's a bigger institution, and more students tend to go from there to Harvard. But the reason I'm drawing that distinction is कि मैं छोटे से school में गया था and I didn't really fit in where I was. I think what my experience was both typical and atypical in the following way. There will be people at Ivy League colleges who get in because they are children. I shared the photograph of Ali Hassan. Ali Hassan, I think he'll agree, is a person of privilege. Senator Aizaz Hassan ka beta, of course, he'll have all the advantages, intellectual, academic, financial, personal networks, to go to a school like 𝐻𝐻𝑆N, to do well at a school like 𝐻𝐻𝑆N, to know how to do a competitive education, a competitive application. And yes, places like Harvard look at your leadership potential. So I wouldn't be surprised कि जो admissions officer वो देख रहा है कि यार एतजाज हसन का बेटा Harvard जाना चाह रहा है, तो he'll be a big shot when he comes out of Harvard and we'll get to claim him as a Harvard graduate. So they think ahead to see who the leaders are going to be, and they want to identify those leaders early. So there are the type of people
Urdu.
accepted.
I thought
Oh, I was told
I was just gone for like 3 minutes and you're speaking English the whole time.
Okay, I'll dial back the English. So Hamza was giving the example of the other person who was at Harvard my year. I don't know if you remember Ali Hassan. So Ali is an example of one kind of profile that goes to an elite college. He comes from an elite background and he goes to elite college. I went to an elite school, so I fit the profile in that way. लेकिन बाकी बच्चों की तरह मेरा background नहीं था. I come from a very middle class background. English मेरी उर्दू से इसलिए बेहतर है because I went to an American school. But my economic background and my class background was very different. तो मेरा जो घर का माहौल था वो मुख्तलिफ था. मेरे जो वसाइल थे वो मुख्तलिफ थे. When I got into Harvard, I was blessed because the scholarship that we got covered 85% जो हमारे package था, उसमें Harvard ने contribute किया. My family and I only had to pay 15% towards my education. And part of, I think, what stood out in my application was I was able to demonstrate whatever circumstances you're in, you're able to distinguish yourself in those circumstances. There's an irony I find among private school kids. जो उम्रा के बच्चे US में होते हैं, वो private schools जाते हैं. Or private school will provide you the best education compared to public school. But I think Hamza will agree that it's very common for public school students to do better at elite colleges to get in. Q is because they're able to identify, I went to a public school, and yet despite going to public school, मैंने ये किया, मैंने ये किया, मैंने ये किया, मैंने ये किया. Private school के तो सारे बच्चे अच्छे होते हैं. उनके सबकी अच्छी grades होती हैं. They all look good. They all come from, privileged backgrounds. So it's harder from a private school to distinguish yourself. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that yes, my profile was typical in that I went to an elite school. I was not from an elite background, and both of those things you'll see at places like Harvard. The other thing I wanted to say, Hamza, in response to this thing about your passion project, I study philosophy, and one of the most famous philosophers, as you will know, is Aristotle. Aristotle ने एक distinction अपने काम में ये share किया कि there's some things that are necessary and there's some things that are sufficient, right? Some things may be necessary, but they're not sufficient. So why am I sharing this here? If you get the best scores, if you go to the best schools, if you get the best grades, and these are things that Chaajao can help you with, all right? Those are necessary. Do not think that you're going to get into a great school with bad grades. Do not think you'll get into a great school with bad scores, but they're not sufficient, all right? So the academic criteria and the quantitative criteria are a way of getting your foot into the door, right? But then that doesn't mean you're going to be in the acceptance pile. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. This idea of passion project is so important because it separates you from everyone else. And 60% of the people in my class at Harvard, according to our proctor who worked in the admissions office खुद खातून कह रही हैं कि 60% applicants qualified academically. So then how she's going to separate in 60% में से कौन yes file में कौन no file में? The separation very often comes down to what is it that can distinguish you, and what can distinguish you very often is where they're able to see that you have a particular passion, that you started something that no one else thought of, or that you led something that no one else stepped forward to do, right? So yes, get good grades, yes, get good scores. Without those, you're not going to have a chance. But then you need to go beyond that. And I think that's where what Hamza is saying is really important.
Right. Jazakallah khair. And you know, and in terms of a thought process that distinguish people and allow them to launch these types of passion projects and stand out, is this concept that your I can is more important than your IQ. Your I can, this sense that you can accomplish your goals, that you can achieve your dreams, that you can essentially do whatever you want, despite any hardships that you have, that you are going to figure out a way to do it. That quality, that self-belief, that is far more important than any natural intelligence, right? It's more important than your grades. It's more important than your SAT scores. That's the unquantifiable X factor that separates people who, it's not just in college admissions, this is for life in general. All of the most successful people, right, are just like you and me. They have the exact same capacity, right? But they had this vision and this mission, and they went after it, and they achieved incredible things as a result. But as Muslims, right, we shouldn't say I can, right? I don't know, maybe you can translate this better, Abdurrahman, but we can't do anything. Ultimately, we are insan, we are weak, right? We make so many mistakes, right? But our iman is the source of our I can, right? Because when we come onto the deen, right, and when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is the one who can do anything. He is al-Qadir, He is al-Alim, He is, you know, He is the one that has all of these qualities. And Islam has given us of tapping in to the infinite power and abundance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we believe in our dua, and we ask Him to open up doors for our success and to allow us to achieve our goals, we are tapping into a divine superpower, right? That is accessible to us if and only if we come onto the deen in terms of our practices. So when I'm speaking to this audience in Pakistan, mashallah, the biggest gift that you've been given is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. This is the most precious thing. This is far more valuable than anything that all of our Harvard classmates who may be off, you know, changing the world and having these big impacts. The La ilaha illallah is much more important, because it will give you not just success for dunya, also in the akhirah, right? So this is an incredibly important concept if you want to, really achieve your dreams, whether it's college dreams or professional dreams or whatever it is. This is something we have. Any reflections on that, Abdurrahman? And maybe
No.
some translation too. I don't know how well that
Sure.
translates.
Right. So you're talking about Iman and I can, and the connection I think is से जो फर्क पड़ता है, that really affects your motivation and your intentions. And you can't really fake your way through the application process. So very often, the kind of reactions I get from people who want to know, how do I get into a good college? Tell me what I need to sound like. Tell me what I need to look like, even if it's not me. Masla ye कि you're not the only one who's thinking like that. You're not the only one who's trying to game the system. The balance, it's odd, is that people like Talal and Hamza will help you improve your chances. But if all you're doing is gaming the system, then the admissions officer is going to see through that. It has to be both at the same time. You have to stand out, and yet you have to be authentic. If you stand out and are posing, all right, you're pretending, then you're going to see through your pretense, because they do this for their living. They review applications for a living. They pick out the most interesting candidates, but ones that are also authentic. Because at the end of the day, they want interesting people in their college. They don't want posers. So I think that's very important. And the second point I think worth drawing out is instead of pretending to be someone you are not, you should play to your strengths. And if you're Muslim and if your deen is important to you, then don't shy away from that. And I can elaborate on this, I think, in the questions. If there are people who are worried about, okay, yeah, I'm applying for Pakistan, so will I come across as too foreign? Is being a foreigner a bad thing? If I'm Muslim, will I come across as too Muslim? Is being Muslim a bad thing? And I think we can sort of elaborate on those sort of questions and potential risks. But the point here is, tawakkul और खुलूस नियत से बहुत फर्क पड़ता है.
Right. I see some questions in the chat, about some of the more practical aspects of applying to college, early admission strategy, and so on. The title of this was Surprising Insights. I think what you need to realize is that tactics are not very important in this whole thing. It's really about the essence of who you are, right? Like, yes, we can talk about those things, and in the Q&A we can cover some of those, and it's optional strategies and this and that, but ultimately the stuff we are talking about here is the core of your success. And a lot of times we have a short-term focus where we are just focused on the immediate thing in front of us. The people who really stand out, they have a vision and a mission of what they're trying to accomplish longer term. And their attitude as they are applying to college is, Inshallah, I am going to be very successful. I know that I'm going to be successful. My I can is so strong. And therefore, because I'm going to be successful, wouldn't it be nice for you to be a part of my story? Wouldn't it be great for for me to talk back on my time at Harvard or at Stanford or whatever it is, and then ultimately give you a lot of money and recognition and so on, right? But when you have that, most people they bend over backwards to try to please the admissions officer, right? Rather than trying to figure out who they are and then try to be the best version of themselves, because that's what's going to turn you into the red umbrella. That's what's going to make you stand out.
This sounds like dating advice.
Not going to go there. So this is one exercise, and this is the last slide, and then we can sort of turn it over to Q&A. This is a way to take what we've been talking about and actually turn it into an action item, right? So typically the people who really stand out, they have two different qualities that are really unusual about them. They have two things that they've gone very, very deep in. And ultimately, a college admissions officer only has about 5 or 10 minutes with your application to read all of your essays, to look at your transcript, to read your recommendation letters, everything. They have 5 or 10 minutes, and they are trying to find your story. Abdurrahman is a branding expert. Each of us has to have a personal brand, and it needs to be crystal clear on the application. What is it that makes you different? What are your red umbrella category things? This is where the strategy and tactics do come in, right? You need to go off and lead that amazing life. But if you're not able to capture that amazing life on paper and in your application, then you're not going to achieve those same level of results. So a really good way of doing this is to try to boil yourself down to a 2-word summary, right? So 2 words that capture 2 different parts of your personality that are the most distinctive, the things you're most interested in. So the classical coder, right? This was a student of mine who she had 2 passions. One was computer science, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. The other was classic languages like Latin and Greek. On the surface, these things have nothing to do with each other. You mentioned Aristotle earlier, right? You're talking about dead languages from 2,000 years ago, and then computer science, cutting edge modern thing. But she was able to write a college essay, like something like what Julius Caesar taught me about algorithms, right? Such a different thing. It jumps off the page. The quarterback poet. Quarterback is like the most important player on a football team, but he's also a poet. It's unexpected. It's different. This great athlete who's also likes, poetry and things. The historian gamer, someone who loves history and their other passion is video games. Maybe they built a video game of their own. The Hafiz mathematician, someone who's memorized the whole Quran, but also is in love with mathematics and has gone very deep in that. The beekeeper biologist, someone who is fascinated by bees and creating honey and this and that, but she also has a passion for biology. Maybe she's on a pre-med type track. Okay, so and Abdurrahman, you might need to explain this in Urdu for them. But what we would like you to do now in the chat is to create a 2-word summary for yourself. Okay, what are your 2 words? What is your personal brand? And then we want to give you maybe after you started, Abdurrahman, let's give them a short time, like 1 minute, for them to do that and put it in the chat. And they could do it in English or Urdu if that's easier. But why don't you explain exactly what it is in case anyone's confused?
Sure. Hamza, you should expect the answers to be in English. It just sometimes helps for the instruction to be in Urdu. So first of all, ignore the right-hand column. 7-word memoir जो लिखा है आप छोड़ दीजिए फिलहाल. 2-word summary के जो column है. First, think of 1 word, right? Make it a noun. कई मिसालें हमजा ने दी. Coder is a noun, poet is a noun, gamer is a noun, mathematician is a noun, biologist is a noun. This could be something you see yourself. अभी अगर मैं अपनी शख्सियत बयान करूं तो क्या है? या मैं करना क्या चाहता हूं? Right? What is it from a university education I want to achieve in life? तो मेरी interest क्या है? Hobby क्या है? Right? So it could be a professional interest, it could be a hobby, it could be a personality. Just pick 1 word which identifies your personality. ठीक है? Coder, poet, gamer, mathematician, biologist. 5 मिसालें तो हमजा ने दी थी. तो make that the first word. और उससे पहले एक और लफ्ज, चाहे वो noun हो या adjective हो. Classical is an adjective, right? But beekeeper, quarterback, historian, hafiz are nouns. Right? So you can have 2 nouns, or you can have an adjective and noun. तो इसका मकसद क्या है? मकसद ये है कि how are you going to distinguish yourself? You can distinguish yourself with 1 word, but a lot of people are going to share that word with you. If you pick 2 unique words, and you're at the intersection of those 2 words, Venn diagram होता है ना? If you did in math class, there's a Venn diagram. एक circle है, एक circle है. The intersection of those circles, that's very unique. तो classical और gamer के intersection पे मैं खड़ा हूँ. और इस intersection में और कोई नहीं खड़ा है. As soon as you can identify 2 things जो एक दूसरे से इतनी मुख्तलिफ हों कि उसके दरमियान में जो बंदा खड़ा है वो बहुत बिल्कुल मुनफरिद है, so then you know that you found something that's unique about you that you can then press in the course of an application. ठीक है? अगर मेरी बात आप समझ गए तो please pick those 2 words. We're going to give you 1 minute. It is 4 minutes past the hour. So please take the following minute. 2 अल्फाज First is
Timer,
adjective
1 minute.
or noun, second is a noun. Go.
So, right. So put them in the chat, but don't hit return. We're gonna
Acha.
all hit return at the same time. So after 1 minute, everyone will send their word in at the same time, not
ठीक
now.
है अभी सबमिट ना कीजिए लेजेंडरी ब्लॉकचेन डेवलपर माशाल्लाह तो अहमद ने तो भेज दिया बाकी लोग ना भेजें अभी
That's a great one, great start. But let's do it all at once, inshallah. Give you a little more time. Okay, so now if people have been holding off, let's count down from 3, 2, 1, and then everyone will send theirs to the chat. So 3, 2, 1, Bismillah. Okay. So what do we have here? We have legendary blockchain developer, mashallah. So this is a very exciting field. Blockchain is mashallah, something that is definitely a technology that is going to be huge in the future. So so that's great. The only thing I would say about that is legendary is an adjective, so it's not really necessary. But blockchain developer, they're both sort of in the same sphere, right? Like potentially it's different, right? Developer is more computer.
I think, brother Abdurrahman, you should take over. I think the internet.
No, internet it's also slowed down for me. Bilal, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
अच्छा ठीक है तो I can comment if Hamza is not
Yeah.
coming through. So I like patriot politician. That's a comment on हमारे आज के क्या हालात हैं. The point that Hamza was making is कि ठीक है blockchain developer is great, but if you do blockchain developers, you'll be one of 5,000 people. ठीक है. You may not be one of 10,000 people. Maybe you're one of 1,000 people. ठीक है. So you got from 10,000 applicants to 1,000 applicants by doing developer. But how do you separate yourself from the other 1,000 applicants that say blockchain developer? तो ये जो दूसरी चीज़ है ना वो इतनी मुख्तलिफ होनी चाहिए कि उसका इंटरसेक्शन पे सिर्फ आप खड़े हो तो IT एक्सपर्ट सेम थिंग आप एक्सपर्ट हैं IT के एक्सपर्ट हैं दैट्स गोना बी 1,000 or more applicants are going to be the same thing. Now artist biologist is different. Usually जो बंदा biologist होता है जो इंजीनियरिंग का स्टूडेंट होता है या साइंस का स्टूडेंट होता है वो आर्ट्स का स्टूडेंट नहीं होता और हमारे यहाँ तो आर्ट्स को तो बुरा समझा जाता है कि यार ये तो थका हुआ है बच्चा. But if you say कि यार मैं आर्टिस्ट भी हूँ और biologist भी हूँ and either these are both important interests of mine or I've combined them in some way, that makes you interesting. ठीक है. I see artist and software engineer, same. Something similar can be said about that. If you want to go into patriot politician, if you have a personal story about how you were disappointed by politics, how you were disenchanted by politics, because left, right, and center, the leaders that you saw, कि यार इनको तो मैं नहीं ले सकता as a role model, and then you found one, or you decided to separate yourself from the crowd and say कि यार everyone thinks politics is a corrupt field, इसलिए कि जो हमारे सामने मिसालें हैं उनमें से एक भी अच्छी नहीं है, लेकिन I want to change that script. Now that makes you interesting. All right. So techie economist again, these are two different things. You're combining them. That's great.
Sorry, Abdurrahman, I'm back, but sorry, computer again issues. So I'm on my phone and I can't see all the earlier ones. So you can keep on going through.
Sure. I'll read them out, Hamza, to you, and then you can comment. Legendary blockchain developer, patriot politician, I just commented on. The go-to coder, code crafter, techie economist, biological coder,
Right.
limitless.
So can I just you may have already talked about those, but the ones that stand out to me are the biological economist?
Yeah, so let's do this. I'll say each one and you say yes, no, maybe. And then if you want to elaborate, you can.
Well, I don't want to say no to their dreams, but what I'm noticing is there's a lot of just coder, right? Like I'm good at computers. And I'll be honest, from the American perspective, I have a Pakistani employee who is an amazing,
Yes.
amazing. He runs my whole back office, and that is a very good skill set to develop and can be very lucrative. But since we're talking about elite college admissions here, and trying to give you clues about that, then if you want to do something even beyond that, then you probably want to have something along with the coding. Sorry, continue.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. कितने आप सोचें ना, how many people from Pakistan want to be coders? Right. Now imagine you're an admissions officer and you're reviewing 10,000 applications. Out of those 10,000 applications, 200 of them are from Pakistan. ठीक है. Out of those 200 applications, 50 talk about wanting to be coders. Are you going to be one of the people I'll accept? Maybe I'll accept one coder out of 50, right? But then I'll be interested in other profiles. So if you're going to be a coder, which is, as Hamza is saying, great career, what is it that's going to be different? Is it that you're going to be a humanist coder? I want to use technology to improve human potential, not to replace human potential. Okay, now that's interesting, right? So you see that twist there. It's almost like a joke. You're setting up a joke and then you go in a different direction, right? That's what makes a joke a joke. You set it up in a way that you think the person is going this way and then you go that way. So if you think of it that way, or you think of it as an intersection, patriot politician, okay, I'll keep going. I'm already mentioned the code crafter, economist, yapper CEO. I don't know what yapper CEO means.
It might mean that they're very talkative, like they're like
right.
Yeah, interesting.
Busy
Definitely stands out. It's different. I need to learn more about what they mean. But it tickles the imagination a little bit. So potential.
Military footballer.
That definitely
sporty
yeah,
entrepreneur.
Yep. I think yeah, entrepreneur is definitely can be very beneficial, but obviously maybe having some more sense of
But the
where you
combination
go
is
within the entrepreneurial world.
the combination is sporty, athletic, entrepreneur.
Right.
What can you do with that?
Yeah, I think you could definitely work with that. With sports, it's hard to stand out with like people write essays about sports. It's very, very difficult to write a good sports essay, because it's a pretty common thing to do. Now, if you're world class, in your sport, then that can definitely help you stand out. But definitely if your athletic endeavors are connected to your entrepreneurial, if you have there's definitely a way potentially to make that work, inshallah.
Yeah. Can I elaborate on that? I can imagine if you are good enough to make the under-17 national team, then being an athlete by itself is sufficient, because that's a great story to tell. How is it that I got to the under-17 team? Right. I get up at 4 a.m. This is what my day looks like, and everyone else's day is very different. Great. If you're not at the national level, but you're a great athlete, you're the best athlete in your school, that may by itself not be enough. But then to make it interesting, you say, wait a minute, what I have learned from cricket, or what I've learned from football, or what I've learned from hockey, or whatever your sport of choice is, I want to apply to entrepreneurship. Right. Either because I want to go into sports management, I understand to develop talent, what does it take? I'm inspired by my coach, or the discipline that it takes on the field, I want to apply that discipline off the field. So now you become a more interesting candidate. Yeah, here's someone who plays cricket all day, but he thinks beyond cricket. Okay, that's very interesting.
Right. Yeah, if anyone's seen the movie that came out last year called Air, it's about Michael Jordan and the agent who first discovered him and then signed him to a sneaker deal. And it's a really interesting intersection of business and sports, and you can, so if you have that kind of interest or profile, that could be huge. Someone's saying to say your favorite one. So, obviously, yeah.
Not everybody is a winner. We're not interested
right. So like the next
coddling our
exercise, which
feelings.
I don't think we have time for today, is the 7-word summary, which I'd probably need, to make a definitive decision. But from this, the ones that stand out to me, I think techie economist, that's an interesting mix. Biological coder also. Those ones, at face value have quite a lot of potential. But again, this is like we're 5 minutes into our branding exercise. I think there can be definite more development. So the people who put the other things, I'm not saying your lives are not going to work out. It's just a question of maybe digging a little deeper. And you probably are. The key is you already have the story there, right? That's another thing. You don't need to manufacture something new in order to have these things. Just look back at your own life and try to figure out. Like Michelangelo used to talk about, he's an amazing sculptor, right? He said that when he saw the block of marble, that the sculpture was already inside that block of marble, and his job was just to get rid of the non-sculpture parts, right? To use his chisel to extract the sculpture. So we all have something like that inside of us, our God-given talent, and our mission, our ikigai. And so some of it's just to look back at what we have done throughout our high school and think about what makes us unique, and then celebrate that. Khair, inshallah. We're sort of in the Q&A section, I guess.
Right.
Abdurrahman, what's that?
15 minutes past the hour. So if Dalal Bhai wants to switch to Q&A, we can do that.
Yeah, sure. So, guys, so this first question is that, is there any key term which students skip for security admission in Harvard?
I don't think we understood the question.
Is there any key term which students skip for security admissions in Harvard?
Could you rephrase that in some way? I'm not sure. Key term, like security admission, like security, like to be sure that they get in, or skip. Yeah, I just,
whoever submitted that, if they just this is a good question. Can we pick up Dua Zahra's question? Am I too late to find my passion project as I'm already in the 12th grade?
Right. So, for I don't know how many people, we should have asked this in the beginning, are actually applying to American universities. If you're planning to apply to an American university, the deadline is coming up. We've passed the early deadline. The deadline's most likely January 1st. Are there people in this crowd who are applying during this cycle?
I think this is a very common question, this one of it. What if we are not good at ECS? So extracurriculars, if someone is not good with the extracurriculars, what are their chances?
I mean, so again, it depends what age group we're talking to. I would say there's no such thing as not being good at your extracurriculars. It's just maybe you haven't focused very much on them. And if you're 17 and you haven't focused much on extracurriculars, I have to be honest, your chances of admission as an undergraduate to a top American university are not great. There are definitely schools over here. One thing we didn't talk about was the financial piece. Abdurrahman shared that mashallah, he was awarded a generous scholarship. He only paid 15% of the Harvard salary, I mean tuition, if I understood. Schools like Harvard do that for international students, but only the top schools do that. For other American universities, for international students, they do not qualify generally for financial aid. And so then they're really only open to the 1%, the very wealthy people within the society. So this is all the more reason why all this stuff is important. But it is going to be a challenge if you're 17 and you haven't done many extracurriculars and so on. But what I would say is most international students, I don't have the statistics, they come to the United States for graduate school, not for their undergraduate school. And there are countless people, most of my friends and community over here are immigrants from Pakistan, from Egypt, from India, from all over the world. And the vast majority of them did their undergraduate education overseas, and then they came here oftentimes for graduate education. So that is definitely still a path forward, and something that you can do.
So there's this question. Basically, students over here, when they're in their high schools, they have two systems to go. I'm sure Brother Abdul Rahman would know that they have their intermediate, an education system that is governed by Pakistan over here, and then they have A levels that is, administered by Cambridge in the UK. So the question is, if a student, for example, goes for intermediate, that is the Pakistani education, or if he has the A levels, the A level grades. So would that affect the application? What would be the impact?
Right. So you can colleges, especially when dealing with international applicants, deal with them as they come. So some people go to British curriculum schools, some people go to American, and some people go to some very different sort of curriculum. A levels and things like that are very familiar to admissions officers. There's a place in the common application where you can mention that you did A levels and things. Obviously, the majority of American students do not do that, but it is something well known, and you certainly can gain admission even if you've been using a different system. And I don't think there's necessarily a tangible advantage, although I do think when you're using the American system, there's just more talk of this earlier on in your career. I mean, Abdurrahman, you could speak more to it. You went to an American school in Pakistan. But yeah.
So the way I would answer the question is, it's not which school system you're going to, because usually that choice is made by your parents anyways, and it's too late by the time you're asking that question. But I think the right question is, how do I take advantage of which system I'm in? If you're in the American system, then you are more familiar with the American university, and they're more familiar with you, right? So you should take advantage of that and maybe play that up. So if a student in Pakistan is intimately aware of American references, then that shows him as being more worldly, and that he'll do well on campus because he already understands a lot about how the American system works and what values are prevalent in the American education system. Same thing if you love Shakespeare and you go to a British school system, great, good for you. If you go to an FSC system and you don't love Shakespeare, that's great. You should actually speak about like a folklore hero that you have and take that to your advantage. Yeah, there are all these Pakistanis who pretend to be, I'm not saying you have to say it this way. There are all these Pakistanis who pretend to be Gora and they want to, quote Shakespeare. I much prefer our local heroes, right? And if you begin to talk about, some Sindhi poet that you discovered and you're really passionate about, local Sindhi poetry, that is actually to your advantage. And that's going to separate you from the typical student who's studying Shakespeare at an A-level school. So I think really what you should understand is, main kahan hu and how can I use that to my advantage? Regardless of which school you're in, you need an ally, your English teacher or your math teacher, or your academic or guidance counselor. Someone like that who can help you navigate the system. Because regardless of which system you're in, if you're applying to the US, you have to understand the American system. And you're applying to the UK, you have to understand the UK system of admissions. There's a whole vocabulary, there's a whole infrastructure, there's a whole schedule. Sometimes you'll find out 6 months too late. All right. So it's, I think, important to find out a mentor or an ally. Maybe an organization like Chaajao can help you with that. But as long as you have an ally or a mentor, I don't think it matters. In fact, you should use that to your advantage.
Okay,
Talal,
great.
can I refer to an earlier question?
Yeah. So this
This
is
idea
Farida
of-
from Hunza. Hunza is it's in the northern part of Pakistan. It's suburban type of area. So she's saying that I gradually developed myself. I have no good grades. So can I get into Harvard?
Do you want me to start with that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's similar to what I said before. I think that there can be amazing stories from people from very humble beginnings, and not everyone has the same level of opportunity as everyone else, and so on. As as we sort of said, academics for these top universities is the single most important factor. So if your grades are not strong, if your SAT scores are not strong, then you're most likely not going to be a competitive candidate at those schools, just to put it very directly. However, that doesn't mean that you cannot eventually go to those schools. Again, after, once you find yourself and you start really working towards your dreams and things like that, then inshallah the sky's the limit of what you're able to accomplish. And so going off to those schools, for graduate school and other things are a definite possibility. So, I would say look at your own situation and make the most of where you are now, inshallah.
So Mehed Bhatti has a question that is it a good idea to put low-level awards, or maybe he means not so important awards on your application, or should you just use the national, international level awards or activities?
Typically you do both. Obviously, the international ones and the national ones will stand out more. But I'll be honest, many of the students I've placed from Islamic schools here, they certainly don't have international recognition and so on. If your story, your branding is very good, then that can overcome it. I would say with international students who do get into these schools, they do tend to have pretty significant accomplishments, right? They're part of the math Olympiad team or something like that. There's something that often stands out quite a lot about the international applicants. But I mean, Abdurrahman's a good example of of someone who managed to stand out maybe without having like a world-class achievement. I don't know if that's fair to say, and maybe
While being mediocre, he still got in.
That's not what I mean, but
No,
I don't know if you have
I think no, you're not wrong. I wasn't a world-class athlete. I was not a, gold medalist. Like I said, I wasn't the top of my class. I was number 2 in my class, second position. I didn't have perfect SATs. I think the way to think about it is, are you a traditional applicant or are you a non-traditional applicant? Traditional applicant se kya murad? कि यार, you're applying on time, you went to a good school, you got good grades, and you know what major you want. But you're there along with, like I said, 1,000 other applicants. So if you're a traditional applicant, the question is why you compared to the other traditional applicants. बाकी सब जिनके अच्छे स्कोर हैं, जिनकी अच्छी ग्रेड्स हैं, जो अच्छे स्कूल में गए, जो एक इंटरेस्टिंग, they're well suited to that qualification, उनकी भी आपकी भी हैं, तो फर्क क्या है? So if you're a traditional applicant, you need to be able to separate yourself from the other traditional applicants. So your story has to be, why are you better or different than them? If you're a non-traditional applicant, you're from a very different part of the country, or you have a very different language background, or you have a very different economic background, or you are really behind your late bloomer, कि आपकी grades इतनी बुरी थी और आहिस्ता बढ़ती जा रही हैं, तो maybe you wait 5 years, or maybe something else came up in life and someone in your family passed and you went through a period where you had to check out of the education system. You're a non-traditional applicant. Or maybe you're 25 years old and now you want to go to university and everyone else is 10 years younger than you. You're in a totally different category. In that case, you really need to address directly कि यार क्या बात थी या क्या मसला था. If you can tell a good story, and if you have a good story to tell, you make an interesting candidate. It doesn't mean that you're disqualified outright, but it does mean that you need very good reasons to explain, okay, why are you not a traditional applicant? Right? And in both cases, what's common is you need a good story.
Okay, so Javeria Qureshi is asking that my teacher has advised me to apply for masters after my graduation in Pakistan, because there are more chances of getting selected on that level. Can you please tell me whether that is better or not?
I'm a big fan of that.
Yes.
So what do you think?
So it's about doing a master's in Pakistan versus doing a master's outside of Pakistan.
No,
Is that
waiting to do a master's rather than coming for an undergraduate to the States?
Yeah, I do think that that's a much more common path. I do think that is that is the path that so many of the people I see in the masjid every single day have followed, right? One of the questions I ask in all of my webinars is how many of the parents, did their undergraduate education here, and almost all of the ones who did, they were also born here or came at a very, very young age. Your story is relatively uncommon of someone who came straight internationally, and did their undergrad. Obviously, we have lots of international students at these schools, but I would say when you look at the American Muslim community, most of them did their graduate education here, or even came after and did all their studies there. There are a lot of doctors here in America who did all their studies overseas, and they come here. They do have to pass some tests to get their accreditation and so on. But yeah, so it is definitely a possibility, inshallah.
I'd like to answer the same question, Talal, may I?
Yeah, sure.
So I think the way I would answer it is, if you're convinced, you've made up your mind कि यार मुझे जाने ही जाना है, US जाने ही जाना है या UK जाने ही जाना है और अभी जाना है और मैं तैयार भी हूँ. If you are convinced and you're ready, तो ठीक है, apply. But if you're not convinced or you're not ready, then take your time, because there's multiple advantages of waiting until your graduate studies or postgraduate studies to go abroad. एक तो ये है कि you'll be better prepared, ठीक है, especially if you need that time. हो सकता है कि you're waking up in the 12th grade कि यार अब क्या करूं, and now I realize कि यार being average isn't sufficient to get into a good university. So maybe that's that, you're not prepared. It might be that कि अब तक आप जो करना चाह रहे थे वो नहीं कर पाए. क्यों? इसलिए कि वालिदैन ने कहा यार साइंस पढ़ो, इंजीनियरिंग पढ़ो, फाइनेंस करो, सीए करो, और what you really want to do, you're still waiting to do. तो ठीक है, आप एमबीए कर लीजिए, एमबीए के बाद जॉब में थोड़ा सा इस्टेब्लिश करके एमबीए के लिए बाहर जाइए आप, ठीक है. सो वंस यू मोर कन्विंस्ड कि आपको जो करना है and will make a better story and make a better profile, then wait to do that. And then the third benefit is that you might personally be more mature and be able to handle the culture shock that comes to going to a foreign country. मैं मिसाल देता हूँ कि I went for my bachelor's to Harvard. A friend of mine went for his master's at Harvard Law School. Now, Harvard College and Harvard Law School both are some of the most difficult places to get into. The route that I took, I went straight after high school. The route that he took, he went to International Islamic University in Islamabad. अच्छा, पहले माशाल्लाह हिफ्स किया, ठीक है, तो स्कूल के दिनों में हिफ्स किया आपने. अच्छा, हिफ्स करने के बाद आपने अपना आई थिंक ए लेवल्स था या एफएससी था, आई एम नॉट श्योर, कंप्लीट किया. उसके बाद आपने इंटरनेशनल इस्लामिक यूनिवर्सिटी में एक नहीं 2 डिग्रीज हासिल की, one in law and one in Islamic law, ठीक है. Then you went on a fellowship to, I think it was either University of Cambridge or University of Oxford Law School. Then you went to Harvard Law School. So mashallah, he just kept collecting things, but by the time he came to the US, he was a hafiz, he had 3 degrees, and he was already engaged. So he knew कि यार मैं किस मकसद के लिए यहाँ पर आया हूँ. He was a very mature person, very well-developed person. He knew what his priorities were, and he had his fiancée waiting for him. So he did all of that, and then he went back home. So for him, it was a much, much more mature and evolved and developed direction than for someone कि यार 17 साल की उम्र में you don't really know yourself. So to move from Pakistan to a random city in the US is not simple. So I think for all those reasons, it is good advice to wait for your graduate studies, unless of course you're fully convinced for whatever reason and you're fully ready, and especially if you already have family there that are going to take care of you when you get there.
So the next question that we have is that if Aisha is asking if I have a score of 1480 on the SAT, but B is in my A2. So basically what she's asking is if we have a good SAT score, but we do not have good high school grades. So is there any chance of acceptance?
Right. So I think the world around the SAT has changed quite a lot. It's continuing to change. Pre-pandemic, the SAT was probably the fourth or fifth most highly weighted quality. The most important quality by far are your grades, your transcript, your grades in your top tier classes, so AP classes, dual enrollment, college level courses, and things like that. What classes you take and what grades you get there, right? And then you know, down, but the SAT used to be very important. Now, during the pandemic, all schools became test optional. It was very difficult to take the test, and so schools became test optional. As a result, many more students applied to schools. So people applied to schools that they never would have applied to before because their SAT score would have sort of kept them out. Now, a lot of schools, they liked that. They have many more people applying to their school. It makes them appear more selective, that their admissions rate, which was 30%, now is 20% because we're getting so many more applications. It makes them go up in the school rankings. It's good for their business and so on. So many schools kept the test optional. And however, at the top tier schools, the pendulum is swinging back towards towards the tests being important again, right? So for Harvard, for MIT, most of the schools like that have either already made the test required for this year, or they're going to be bringing it back for next year. So, and especially as an international applicant, you guys would know better, Brother Talal, about the TOEFL and things like that. And I'm not an expert in international admissions by any means, but it is important to demonstrate English proficiency. I think we've seen that in this webinar, that some people were maybe struggling with the English or the pace at which we were speaking, which is totally understandable. But I would recommend that you work on exposing yourself to not just Pakistani people speaking English or the way they teach English in a course there, but to real Western media where they are speaking at that faster rate, because I imagine that is something that is very important. It is evaluative, part of the process. But again, Brother Talal, you might have even more insight on that than I do.
Yeah, actually, the students that we have, they, especially the ones who are working on their SATs and are in their high schools, they are really working hard on English language these days, and they are into, working with they are exposed to the Western teachers and audience as well. So yeah, I think they are working on it. So the next question I have is from Dua. She's saying that I have pretty good extracurriculars and are something related to my passion. So do I really need to find something that reflects my passion? My scores are pretty good, and I have won several awards that really match with my major.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like, mashallah, you have a strong background. Now it's just a question of telling a story that makes it all come together. So, some people talk about they're very well-rounded, right? They do a lot of different things, and they have a lot of different parts. It's very difficult to stand out in a competitive admissions process as playing the well-rounded card. Most of the people who do stand out the most are more pointy. So in other words, they have, like we did with that exercise with the two-word summary, they have two things that they've gone really quite deep on. So most likely, if you've done all these things and are an impressive candidate, then with the right guidance and so on, you can figure out a way to tell a story that's that can make you compelling. But simply saying, I did this and I did that, and I have all these different parts of me. If there's not a uniting factor, a common thread that makes your story cohesive and makes sense all together, then it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to stand out. Yeah.
All right. So okay. So the next is, please do tell about the test optional Ivy League universities, and if we apply without SAT, can we get accepted?
That is a good question. I can Google it. Most of the Ivies have already brought back the test, or if they haven't this cycle, they are the next cycle. But there are lots and lots of universities that do not require it. If depending on your financial situation, a useful Google search or ChatGPT query would be, what are schools that are test optional that that also provide funding for international students? So I can try to look into that in the background as we go. But I think that could be an option. Because I'm sure there are some schools that fit into that, but it's a relatively small number of schools that are test optional that are going to provide a lot of funding for international students. Now, if you come from a family which, mashallah, has is very comfortable financially and you can actually afford American education, then there are lots and lots of opportunities here. And you don't need to go to a top tier university. Right, 97% of students in America go to schools with acceptance rates of 50% or higher. Right, so they go to schools that most people have probably not heard of. They're not the big famous brand name schools, but they can be wonderful schools and life-changing schools. And American higher education is understandably sought after from all parts of the world. I would say that there are probably opportunities in Europe that you could look into. I think for a lot of international students, they'll look there. Education tends to be subsidized there, and it's much less expensive. And so again, this is not my area of expertise, advising international students, but I do think there are other options that you could look into beyond just the American universities.
Hamza, what you just said, I think, is really important, and I want to repeat it. You need to ask yourself कि मुझे चाहिए क्या, right? मुझे education चाहिए, मुझे financial aid चाहिए, या मुझे brand name चाहिए, right? अगर आपको सिर्फ education चाहिए, आपको financial aid की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपको brand की ज़रूरत नहीं है, तो बेतहाशा universities हैं US में, ठीक है? तो आप फिक्र ना कीजिए. अगर आपको एजुकेशन चाहिए और फाइनेंशियल एड चाहिए और ब्रांड भी चाहिए कि यार आईवी लीग से होना चाहिए और वो मुझे फंड भी करें और मैं वहाँ एंटर भी करूँ, तो फिर आप अपने आप को बेवकूफ़ ना बनाएं, ना किसी और को बेवकूफ़ बनाएं. कि स्कोर्स भी आपके अच्छे होने चाहिए, रैंक भी आपका अच्छा होना चाहिए, एसएस भी आपके अच्छे होने चाहिए, इंटरेस्ट भी आपके होने चाहिए. यू नीड टू हैव एवरीथिंग एंड यू स्टिल नीड टू डिफरेंशिएट योरसेल्फ, राइट? सो लेट्स नॉट फूल आवरसेल्व्स. आई नो हमजा इज़ अ वेरी नाइस पर्सन. He's not going to be as blunt as I am. लेकिन अगर आप किसी एरिया में वीक हैं तो आपको दाखला नहीं मिलेगा. भाई वो दाखला क्यों देंगे? They're not in the business of letting people in. They're in the business of building the best possible cohort for their university so that they can then tell everyone in the world how great a university Harvard is or how great a university Cornell is. तो क्या हुआ if Cornell makes test optional? आप क्या समझते हैं कि अगर कॉर्नेल का टेस्ट ऑप्शनल है तो वहां पर वीक कैंडिडेट्स एक्सेप्ट हो जाएंगे? हरगिज नहीं. कह रहे हैं कि by removing the test constraint, maybe there's some genius kid who just doesn't test well. और उसकी जो geniusness हम नहीं समझ पाएंगे बगैर टेस्ट के. Okay, if you are the genius kid who does not test well, then please apply to Cornell, and inshallah you'll get in. Great. But don't think कि यार मेरे scores अच्छे नहीं हैं तो let me apply to universities जहाँ scores की जरूरत नहीं है, right? So if you need financial aid, but you don't need a brand.
There's one question which is about the AP exams, so the advanced placements. He's asking that is AP exam will give advantage for getting scholarship or help to get into top university?
Yeah, so when you apply to school, your school will provide something called a school profile. And the school profile will tell the colleges what the academic opportunities are available at your specific school. And if you go to a school that offers a lot of AP courses, they will the top candidates from that school will have taken a lot of the AP courses. But many people, like the school which I taught at for many years, we did not offer APs of any kind. Our students did something that's called dual enrollment, where they were taking classes at local community colleges, and so on. That did not hurt our students, the fact that they did not have AP courses, because it was not available. So you need to make the most of the situation that you're in. Does taking 12 APs and getting fives on all of them automatically guarantee you admission? Absolutely not. There are, as Abdurrahman said, 60% of the students are qualified. The way I've heard it said, Harvard has often said, there are 2,000 people in the class that they accept. They often say they could take the next 2,000 on their list and have just as strong a class, and even probably the third 2,000 after that. Right? In other words, they have way more applicants than they can have. That's why, if you really do want to go to a top tier university, you don't apply to just one. You apply to a wide number, and this is where your early decision strategy and all these kinds of things come in. Again, I think with the crowd we're talking to here, which seem to have a lot of seniors in it, this is a conversation, inshallah, we could have had a few years ago, and it might have been very helpful. But that's why we're starting now. And so on. So I would say, just look at where you're at right now in terms of your qualifications, and make decisions on the basis of that, inshallah.
So, Brother Hamza, to add on to what you just said, there is Gurmeet. Her question is that I am in 12th grade. I'm just summarizing. She has a long question. So she's asking three things. To get into an Ivy League, what is the SAT score generally required? And since she is in 12th grade, what would be the application deadline? And what are the effective time management strategies that she should adopt to, go in line with it?
Right. So all of that information is very easily available. You can just Google it and I'm sure find it. But there's something called the Common Data Set, which is a place where universities have to upload their lots of information about them, including SAT scores. Typically, they're reported at the 25th percentile, 50th percentile, and 75th percentile. The scores for top universities are very depressing, I'm sure, for you. Like 25th percentile is around 1540, 1550. And then, 75th percentile is, 1580. That does not mean that if you have below a 1540, you can't get into those schools. I would say, again, it's so dependent on what else is going on with your profile. It's going to be difficult to be competitive at those schools unless you're certainly in the 1400s, probably mid to higher 1400s, and so on. But that's just to get your foot in the door. The tangible difference, and again, I don't know enough about international admissions, and if it's a different story. Here, like in the States, there's not a huge difference between like a 1520 and a 1550. It's like once you're above the 1500 range, they're like, okay, yes, they're academically in pretty good shape to do well, right? So I wouldn't say and sorry, the other question, deadlines. Typically, the regular decision deadline is January 1st. Or very early January. You can find this all on the Common App, and again, all the websites of the universities, they will tell you their admissions process. Time management, I mean, at this point, if you're trying to apply to those schools, you have about 6-7 weeks to get ready. So you need to understand the components of the application. I've done a lot of webinars. If you search maybe I can find my channel, but with tips about essays and things. I've run essay workshops and courses, and so and there are a lot of other people out, like me. There's I'll find a link that's quite helpful for people, and I'll put it in the chat. There's someone named the college essay guy, and he has some really great advice for international students, and about ideas for for application. So I'll search for that and find it, inshallah.
So, Brother Brahman, there's one question which is asking about the discipline of Harvard that has the best job opportunities.
So Hamza majored in Near Eastern languages and civilizations. ये तो field लोग जानते भी नहीं है, let alone is considered attractive in the job market. One of the blessings of going to a place like Harvard is that you can major in anything you want, and people will still offer you a job. Going to Harvard is like being a pretty girl. Everyone wants to talk to you at least once. All right. So if am I wrong, Hamza?
Astaghfir. No, you're not wrong. But astaghfirullah.
But so that's where the brand comes in. If you go to a brand name school, then you can study anything. It doesn't matter because it's the brand of the school that will get you the job opportunities, not the choice of major.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say 100%. There's different paths to career success. Traditionally, Muslims are interested in a very small number of fields, and this is, I don't know if this is true in Pakistan as well, but essentially it's okay, engineering, medicine, computer science, and maybe law, right? So again, mashallah, there are lots of very successful Pakistani doctors and engineers, and maybe it runs in your blood, or I don't know what it is. But to stand out, I think, like your example, Abdurrahman, is that you didn't fit that profile. You didn't fit the sort of stereotypical profile. It's just very difficult in general in life to stand out when you look like everyone else. That said, those professions do tend to have, the overall higher salaries. So again, if the financial piece is the key, if you go to a top tier school, like Abdurrahman just said, you can really. I had people who studied folklore and mythology, and then they went to Wall Street, and they were making, $500,000 a year or two out of college, right? So it's very, very possible, like when you go to these types of schools. Now, if you go to not a particularly well-known school and you study English literature, for example, just to throw my thing under the bus, there aren't, the opportunities are not as obvious, right? They exist, but they're not totally clear. So there can be some strategy, and I think it's probably more important for international students to think carefully about that. If you're trying to make it, like developing real world skills. What I would say is, like I said, the brother who helps me run my company right now is a 24-year-old Pakistani. I believe he's in Islamabad area, and he is the most dedicated employee I have ever had. He has, he doesn't have a fully developed skill set. He doesn't know how to do everything that I ask him to do, but he figures it out. And he goes above and beyond. He stays up till 3 a.m. to provide support on a webinar. Whatever I've ever asked him to do, he does. And as a result, I'm confident that, inshallah, he'll stay with me for a long time, but he will be very, very successful, right? Because he has that growth mindset, and he has that drive and enthusiasm. And he has sort of even though he's not the owner of the company, he has that owner mindset that we're going to make this work. If you can't teach that, right? He could have amazing technical skills, but if he didn't respond to my texts and he didn't do what I asked him to do, he would not be nearly as valuable to me, and I would move on very quickly, right? So make yourself invaluable. The more value you add, and you don't need to wait until you have a college degree to do this. So many people, if you want a side hustle or side income, become an expert in some particular field. Obviously there's all sorts of Pakistani developers on Upwork and other places. And, again, I don't know enough about the ecosystem there about how to stand out, but it is very possible,
If I can speak
Yeah,
to this.
please.
A common dilemma in Pakistan is we have such a large labor market and it's so competitive that we spend all of our time trying to get the best scores possible. And we have no time for extracurriculars or hobbies, right? Those of us who want to do well in school. But the problem for college admissions, especially in a place like the US, is by putting all of your energy into getting the highest marks in the best position, ironically, you're putting yourself at a slight disadvantage because you look so boring as a candidate. So interestingly enough, the second position candidate who has an interesting, business that he started, I started a business when I was in high school, or has a great passion that other people don't share, whether it's a hobby or is doing, like a job in the evening to make money for his family. If there's something non-academic that's interesting about him, he's going to be a better candidate for university admissions. And all of the kids who spend all of their time in their studies, ironically, right, they don't stand out when it comes to university admissions. So I think this is a dilemma in a place like Pakistan that I think is worth highlighting. What I would say to the question of agar extracurriculars nahi hai, so you either lead something or you join something, right? And it's never, you either lead something or you start something. It's never too late to start something. So if you haven't been doing extracurriculars in school, then start something new. Do it on your own, do it online, do it with people who are not at school. If you're doing a job, start a business, right? Or do it like a job outside school. Those things are interesting. It doesn't have to be like a school-sanctioned extracurricular activity. But if you don't have anything outside academics, you're not going to stand out, at least not in the Ivy League. I don't want to, fool you.
Okay, so I think let's take one more question and then we'll try to wind it up. So this question is how much maximum scholarships Ivy provides, and also would appreciate if you would tell about financial aids that Ivy provides and to what extent and in which cases.
So Ivy Leagues in particular are extremely generous with need-based financial aid. And so up to and including your entire tuition, depending on your family situation. If you were coming from a village in Pakistan and had this amazing profile and very little financial backing, you would most likely not have to pay anything. That is very unusual. Most American universities do not give any financial aid to international students, but the very top ones, they are very, very generous with financial aid. There are fairly complicated financial aid forms. Again, I don't know the process as much for international students, but there's something called the CSS, which is administered by the college board, which does a deep dive into your finances. So this, at least for American students, this is the form that you fill in, and I imagine it will be something similar for international students, but it's not something I can speak definitively on how they figure out your financial situation. But yes, that is one of the real benefits. I don't know if you have insight in that, Abdurrahman.
I don't have more to add on that. I'm happy to answer. There's two questions that came from me at the end. I could combine them in an answer. Brother Talal, do we have more time? I see that we're approaching 2 hours now.
I don't mind. I think
I have to leave very, very shortly. But obviously you're welcome to stay. Can I just ask a question for the audience? From what you've heard today, what is your main takeaway? Like what do you understand now that maybe you didn't? What was your surprising insight about Ivy League and top tier admissions? If people could just start sending some things in the chat, that would be interesting to me to hear what you got from what we've been talking about.
So by takeaway, you mean when I started, I didn't know something that I learned at the webinar.
Yep. So just be yourself. No need to fake everything. MashaAllah. Your story, your voice matters. It's not easy. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, these are great. MashaAllah. Keep them coming. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Ayakum. Anyone else? I can't see how many people are still in the meeting. I think we have quite a few. Give your best and aim high. Don't be deterred by the Ivy label. Okay, I like it. Yep. One thing they often say is, if you aim for the stars, then you still land on the moon or something. I don't know. There's probably a better way to say it, but something like that. Distinctive qualities are required. Yep, that's definitely clear. Show your uniqueness. Alhamdulillah. Nice. Become the red umbrella. Beautiful. I like that metaphor. I do realize, Abdurrahman, that you're right. I do need to license that image. So thank you for your branding guidance to me. Extracurriculars like my own business and something other than like the general sports was something motivating and new for me. Great, mashallah. Yes, that's another way to think about it. What's something new that you hadn't heard before? This is the first time I've spoken to a predominantly Pakistani audience. So and this is one of the reasons I brought Abdurrahman along with me, because he understands the people. I should have mentioned that I did spend time in Pakistan. Right after graduating from Harvard, I did spend some time with the Tablighi Jamaat in Raiwind, in Islamabad, in Peshawar, in Dir, which is in NWFP. So I am, alhamdulillah, have spent a little bit of time over there myself.
You can pass can I address
just a reminder, true to yourself. Beautiful, mashallah. Hard work and consistency. I may take a gap year now to develop my ECAs. Yep. So again, going to undergraduate admission in the United States isn't necessarily the best option right now. I did do a gap year. It was life-changing for me. Between high school and college, I traveled. I got an around-the-world ticket, and you could have as many stops as you wanted as long as you always flew the same direction. So I flew from Boston to California to Hawaii to Nepal, and then to Thailand, and then to Nepal. And I spent 3 months in Nepal, hiking in the Himalayas and other things like that. I came to India, and saw some of India, and then I spent a great deal of time in Europe, trying to see all the artwork that I'd studied in art history and so on. And interestingly, Abdurrahman said you got in early to Harvard. My path into Harvard was actually quite a bit different. I applied early to Harvard, and I got deferred, which means they don't make a decision on you. They wait until the the regular decision. And then when the regular decisions came out, I was waitlisted. So again, they hadn't given me a decision. So it looked like I was going to go to a different university. I was choosing between Georgetown and Columbia, which are two other, mashallah, great schools over here. And then after I'd actually deposited at Georgetown is when I actually got into Harvard. But I was something they call Z-listed. I was offered admission I should have been the class of 2000. Instead, I was offered in the class of 2001. And they asked me to take a gap year. And the one requirement for my gap year was that I not do anything academic. Right? So in other words, I had checked the academic boxes. Like Abdurrahman, I was the second in my class. I was the first in my class my junior year, which is the most important. So I had very strong academics, but they wanted me to mature a little bit. I needed a little more time in the oven. And that gap year was fantastic. It was, it really helped me. So I'm a big fan of gap years. I understand that, traveling around the world is probably not always an opportunity for people, but you can do so many interesting things in that time. But I would highly recommend doing your admissions before the gap year, not doing a gap year and then reapplying to school. That's typically what happens. There's also the option of transferring into universities. You can, and again, I don't know much about international transfers, but in general, you can start at one university, and then after 1 year or 2 years, you can transfer, and that's sometimes another backdoor into these top tier schools. Sorry, I'm going to. I wasn't
can
reading
go
everything,
for
and
10,
yep, go ahead.
15 more minutes, but I think Hamza needs to go now. Would you?
Yeah.
So there are a few questions still. Yeah.
So are you fine with that, Talal? I go for another 15 minutes, but Hamza leaves now.
I have no problem. If you guys are okay with it, we can go on with it. We have a few questions here. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So should I address any question in particular? I think there was a couple.
Okay, I'm going to say goodbye. This was wonderful for the Chaajao team. Thank you so much for putting this together. It was great to spend over 2 hours now, mashallah, with you, Abdurrahman, as always. And I really appreciate the work you're doing. I think that you all have very bright futures in front of you. Like I hope that this wasn't discouraging for any of you, even if maybe it became clear that you're not going to be a competitive candidate right now for going to an top tier university. I really hope that your message, your takeaway from this isn't, oh, I'm a failure, because that's not the case. Remember, your ICANN is more important than your IQ, right? And if you develop that vision for yourself and that belief, then you, inshallah, will be able to get there and make a huge impact. And just remember that everything you're doing in this dunya, you're planting seeds for the akhirah, right? That everything you're doing here, it's not just about career and this and that. Do things, whether it's your profession or your passion, right? Do things, or your mission. Do things that are beneficial for the ummah, and that's where you'll taste the real success. That's the real falah, is what comes after this world, right? So keep that akhirah mindset, that barakah mindset, and inshallah Allah will open up doors for you, inshallah. Jazakallahu khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Brother Hamza, for the kind words. And I hope all the students over here would benefit a lot from the guidance that you've just provided to all of them.
I will just I'll put my email in the chat. I did it before, but I'll do it one more time in case people want to follow up. Also, we have our website and things. Sorry, I should have done this earlier.
What we can do is, one more thing that we can do is, we have a WhatsApp group. So, I will also add you guys over there. So if there are any more questions and people who have not attended, there are a few people I think who have not attended the session as well. So if they have any questions, we can, have a discussion over there as well.
One thing is, you can see on my, it's a little hard to find on the webpage, but I do have the 30 college essays in 30 days that I wrote. We didn't get a chance to talk much about essays, but that can be a useful resource, and some other things there as well. But Jazakallah khair. It was wonderful meeting all of you, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. I'll stay on.
All right. So I think there is this जी ये questions हैं.
जी.
So does your choice of major on application essay match your resume? My daughter wants a major that does not have much in activities in.
जी नहीं, ये अच्छा सवाल है। इसके दो जवाब हैं। एक तो जवाब ये है कि आप जो समझाना चाह रहे हैं पढ़ने वाले को, वो पढ़ने वाला कैसे समझेगा कि अगर आपकी डेटा मुख्तलिफ है और आप क्या कुछ और रहे हैं, यानी कि आपकी एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज एक चीज़ में है और आप मेजर कुछ और करना चाहते हैं, तो मुझे लगेगा यार बंदी को पता नहीं ये करना क्या चाहती है। दैट्स वन वे टू आंसर द क्वेश्चन। अ डिफरेंट वे टू आंसर द क्वेश्चन, अगर आप कहें कि भाई मैं अब तक ये समझती रही कि सबसे अच्छी चीज़ ये है कि मैं डॉक्टर बनूं, तो मेरी अम्मी डॉक्टर हैं, मेरी खाला डॉक्टर हैं, मेरी नानी पहली डॉक्टर थी हमारे फैमिली में, ठीक है, तो मेरे जहन में हमेशा एक था मैं डॉक्टर बनूंगी, तो मेरी जो सारी एक्टिविटीज़ हैं वो मेडिसिन रिलेटेड थी। लेकिन मुझे अब ख्याल आया आखिरी साल में स्कूल के कि यार मेरा मैच नहीं है फॉर वट एवर रीज़न, राइट? मेरा इंटरेस्ट वाकई में यहाँ नहीं है, वहाँ है। और अलहमदिल्ला मेरे स्कोर्स भी हैं, मेरी एक्टिविटीज़ भी हैं। लेकिन अगर मैं ये बयान कर पाऊँ अपने ऐसे में कि यार मैंने अब दरियाफ्त किया है कि मुझे ज़िंदगी में क्या करना है, सो दैट मेक्स एन इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी। तो इसी सवाल के दो जवाब हैं कि यार इफ़ एवरीथिंग एल्स इज इक्वल तो ठीक है, मैच होना चाहिए। लेकिन अगर इफ देयर इज एन इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी टू टेल कि डेटा कुछ कह रहा है और मैं कुछ करना चाहता हूँ या मैं कुछ करना चाहती हूँ, तो दैट एक्चुअली मे बी टू योर एडवांटेज, एंड द डिटेल्स ऑफ कोर्स डिपेंड्स ऑन द फैमिली।
Okay, so this is a question directed to you. Hello, sir, Abdur Rahman. Could you please tell me a little bit about the business you started in high school? How large was your impact currently working, I think? Yeah.
ठीक है, तो मैं दो बातें कहूँगा बिकॉज आई थिंक समवन एल्स, किसी और ने भी ये पूछा कि भाई आपने क्या कमाल किया कि आपको मिल गया एडमिशन, बेसिकली मकसद ये था सवाल का। तो द बिजनेस आई डिड, पहले मैं ये जवाब दे दूँ। बिजनेस आई डिड वो बहुत छोटा सा बिजनेस था। आई टर्न्ड माई क्लासमेट्स इनटू क्लाइंट्स। तो हमारे स्कूल में स्पोर्ट्स टीम्स थी, तो हर स्पोर्ट्स टीम का यूनिफॉर्म होता था, राइट। और अगर स्विम टीम होगी तो तौलिए भी होते थे, ठीक है ना। तो वो यूनिफॉर्म हर साल हर टीम के लिए नया कोई ना कोई बनाता था। चूंकि मैं खुद स्टूडेंट था, तो मैंने देखा कि यार ये स्पोर्ट्स टीम भी, ये स्पोर्ट्स टीम भी, ये स्पोर्ट्स टीम भी, इन सब की यूनिफॉर्म मैं क्यों ना बनाऊँ। तो मेरे एक खालू थे, जो मुझे ज़रा मार्केट ले जाते थे, इसलिए वो प्रिंटिंग बिजनेस में थे। मैं जाके ख़रीदता था ज़रा मार्केट इन कराची से, मैं सफ़ेद टी शर्ट्स ख़रीदता था, फिर उनके प्रिंटिंग प्रेस जाके मैं ऑर्डर्स उनको देता था, और फिर मैं मार्केटिंग स्कूल में करता था। ठीक, तो बहुत सिंपल सा बिजनेस है, छोटा सा बिजनेस था। लेकिन द रीज़न आई थिंक दैट वाज इंटरेस्टिंग इज़ द कॉन्टेक्स्ट। कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है कि द majority of what I've achieved in life after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from my mother। ठीक है, मेरी वालदा मोहतरमा लाइब्रेरियन थी हमारे स्कूल में। ठीक है, तो मैंने कहा ना कि मैं उम्रा के बच्चों के साथ स्कूल जाता था, तो हमारा अपना मिडिल क्लास बैकग्राउंड था। ऐसा था कि हम किसी को घर बुला नहीं सकते थे, और हम कपड़े अपने ज़ारा मार्केट से ख़रीदते थे। क्यों? इसलिए कि इफ़ यू बाय क्लोथ्स सेकंड हैंड फ्रॉम ज़ारा मार्केट और लुंडा बाज़ार इवन, देन यू लुक अमेरिकन। और जो बच्चे हमारे क्लास में थे वो लंदन से और दुबई से अपने कपड़े ख़रीदते थे। तो अगर मैं अपना चेस से पाकिस्तानी ब्रांड से ख़रीदूँ तो मुख्तलिफ मेरे कपड़े लगते थे। बहरहाल आई एम गिविंग सम बैकग्राउंड हियर। तो फॉर समवन इन माई पोजिशन टू टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ द पर्टिकुलर कॉन्टेक्स्ट कि यार बाकी सब बच्चों के पास पैसा है, नौकर हैं, ठीक है, और बड़े बड़े घर हैं, तो मैं यहाँ पर कैसे अपने आप को मैं आजमाऊँ। तो मैंने बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटी अपने स्कूल में शुरू की। नो वन एल्स इन माई स्कूल नीडेड टू डू बिजनेस। I use an opportunity to make some money, learn some leadership skills. So that's, I think, what made my story interesting. जहाँ तक बिजनेस की बात है, जहाँ तक मिशन की बात है, यानी कि आई वॉज गुड इन एकेडमिक्स, आई वॉज गुड इन स्पोर्ट्स। लेकिन मैंने जैसे कहा, हाँ, रेफरेंसेस मेरे बहुत अच्छे थे, मेरा ख्याल है, अंदाज़ा है, इसलिए कि मेरे इस्तातिज़ा मुझे चाहते थे। तो that came through, and you can't fake that. Your teachers are going to, favor the best students usually if they know what they're doing. और जो ऐसे था, मैंने महीने गुजारे ऐसे पे। तो आपको अगर अगर आप क्लास 7 में हैं, 8 में हैं, 9 में हैं, तो पैशन प्रोजेक्ट ज़रूर पकड़िए। अगर आप क्लास 11 में हैं, 12 में हैं और पैशन प्रोजेक्ट के लिए शायद टाइम ना हो, तो आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा वक्त अपने ऐसे पे गुजारिए। इसलिए कि कोई जब ऐसे पढ़ता है ना, रिमेंबर, ये इन लोगों का तो काम ही यही है, ऐसे पढ़ना, प्रोफाइल पढ़ना, समझना, जहाँ कि किसको कहाँ रखना है, किसको कहाँ रखना है। तो जो ऐसे आपका पढ़ता है ना, उससे पता चलेगा इस बंदे का भेजा है या नहीं है, इस बंदे के पास जबान है या नहीं, यानी कि बात करने का तरीका आता है या नहीं आता, और जिगर है या नहीं। ये तीनों चीज़ें ऐसे से बहुत आसानी से बदल जाती हैं। तो आई रोट 2 डिफरेंट एसेज, एंड आई थिंक वन और द अदर प्रॉब्ली मेड द डिफरेंस। कि वो उन्होंने कहा कि यार ये अच्छा बच्चा है जो हम चाहते हैं कि हमारे पास आ जाए। तो बाकी सारी चीज़ें आपको करनी हैं, लेकिन उनको करने के बाद आपको ये सोचना है कि यार मुझ में और बाकी सब में क्या फ़र्क है, राइट। और वो फ़र्क वो एसएटी में 10 पॉइंट ज़्यादा होने से शायद ना हो। और ये मैं नहीं कह रहा कि एसएटी की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपको एसएटी की ज़रूरत है, टोफल की ज़रूरत है, सारे टेस्ट की ज़रूरत है, बिकॉज दोज आर नेसेसरी बट देर नॉट सफिशेंट। लेकिन फिर उसके बाद आपको इस सवाल का जवाब देना है कि मैं क्यों, कोई और क्यों नहीं। तो फॉर मी, आई थिंक, ऑनेस्टली, आई थिंक it came down to the essays that I wrote.
So I think brother Abdurrahman, इसको अब हम वाइंड अप करने की तरफ चलते हैं, because I think there are a couple of questions जो कि रिपीट हुए हैं, तो बात सारी हो गई है। If you have any final comments तो आप बात कर लें एंड
जी
इंशाल्लाह फिर हम इसको
हम द मौजूद था वेबिनार का सरप्राइजिंग लेसन्स फ्रॉम टू हार्वर्ड ग्रेजुएट्स। तो आई थिंक द सरप्राइजिंग लेसन दैट आई वांट टू एंड ऑन वो ये है कि आपको हार्वर्ड जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। ठीक है, आपको स्टैनफोर्ड जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपको एमआईटी जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपको प्रिंसटन जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। ठीक है, मैंने जो मिसाल दी शायद लोगों को बुरी लगी हो कि गोइंग टू हार्वर्ड इज़ लाइक बीइंग अ प्रीटी गर्ल। इससे पहले भी मैंने मिसाल हार्वर्ड ने सॉरी हमजा ने कहा था, क्या कहा था हमने कि focus on yourself. Don't try to impress the school. You should focus on why you should take me. Right? तो मैंने कहा you're giving dating advice. तो लोग शायद गलत समझ गए। मेरे कहने का मकसद यही था कि भाई आप अपनी कैंडिडेसी इतनी इम्प्रूव करें, स्ट्रेंथन करें कि सामने वाला चाहे। अगर आप उसके पीछे भागेंगे तो you will come across as desperate. Right? So if you're looking for a marriage candidate, then you need to be focused on your own profile and don't try to pretend or take shortcuts and be desperate. मिसाल मैं ये देता हूँ कि जैसे लूडो के पीछे बोर्ड होता है ना, स्नेक्स एंड लैडर्स। उर्दू में क्या कहते हैं मुझे मालूम नहीं, इंग्लिश में उसको हम स्नेक्स एंड लैडर्स कहते थे। लूडो के बोर्ड के पीछे तो वो आप है ना एक एक करके गोट पे चल रहे गोट चल रही है आपकी, फिर वो सीढ़ी आई तो सीढ़ी से अचानक आप है ना तेरह आपने कदम तय कर लिए। तो गोइंग टू कॉलेज, अ गुड कॉलेज, स्पेशली अ ब्रांड नेम कॉलेज इज लाइक दैट। आपको सीढ़ी मिल गई, यू जंप फ्रॉम लेवल 1 टू लेवल 3। लेकिन ज़रूरी नहीं है, आप ऐसे भी चल सकते हैं और हो सकता है कि आपको दूसरी सीढ़ी बाद में मिले और वो सीढ़ी आपके लिए बेहतर हो। मैं जब हार्वर्ड गया था तो मेरा दोस्त था, वो ब्रांडाइस यूनिवर्सिटी गया था, नजीब नाम है उसका। और उसकी कहानी ये है कि वो बांग्लादेश से आया था। उसकी जो प्रिंसिपल थी, उनकी बेटी हार्वर्ड में एडमिशन हो गया। उसका अपना ख्याल था कि यार प्रिंसिपल ने अपनी बेटी को फेवर किया, हालांकि मैं बेहतर कैंडिडेट था। तो वो हार्वर्ड नहीं गया, वो टियर 2 स्कूल गया, ब्रांडाइस। लेकिन माशाल्लाह वो इतना समझदार और ज़हीन और मेहनती लड़का था कि ब्रांडाइस के बाद वो उसने पीएचडी की इकोनॉमिक्स में स्टैनफोर्ड से, और उसके बाद वो अब वो यूनिवर्सिटी प्रोफेसर है। तो यानी कि वो मुझसे आगे बढ़ गया। हालांकि मैं पहले हार्वर्ड गया था, तो उसकी सीढ़ी उसका इंतजार कर रही थी। तो हो सकता है कि आपकी सीढ़ी भी आपका इंतजार कर रही हो। ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप हार्वर्ड जाएं, ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप बैचलर्स के लिए जाएं। आप रुक के जाइए, आप ये देखिए कि मेरे लिए सही वक्त क्या है, when I'm ready, when I have a story and I'm ready to share that story। तो मैं इस बात पे इख्तिताम करना चाहूँगा कि माना कि मैं हार्वर्ड ग्रेजुएट हूँ, जब भी मुझे बुलाया गया है, ठीक है, ये भी मार्केटिंग है, ठीक है, वरना ब्रदर तलाल ना याद करते मुझे, शायद हमजा को भी याद ना याद करते। मैंने देखा ओपनिंग साइड पे लगा था अब्दुलरहमान सैयद, पता नहीं नीचे अलजेब्रा कंपनी का नाम था, और फिर बोल्ड में था हार्वर्ड ग्रेजुएट। ठीक है, तो मार्केटिंग तो अपनी जगह है, लेकिन ज़िंदगी में आपको हार्वर्ड की ज़रूरत नहीं है। ठीक है, आपको खुलूस से नीयत की ज़रूरत है, आपको अपनी वालिदैन की दुआओं की ज़रूरत है, आपको मेहनत की ज़रूरत है, और थोड़ी सी मार्केटिंग की ज़रूरत है। ठीक है ना, कि व्हाट्स द स्टोरी यू हैव एंड हाउ आर यू गोना टेल इट।
Thank you so much, Brother Brahman, for the inspiring words. Thank you so much for the entire session. I think जो भी स्टूडेंट्स ने ये सेशन लिया है उनको फ़ायदा होगा, और आगे भी अगर वो आपकी बातों को अप्लाई करेंगे तो इंशाल्लाह चीज़ें उनकी बहुत अच्छी रहेंगी. I'll try my best कि if we can get a WhatsApp group, and if we carry on the discussion later on whenever you guys have time, and that would be amazing. And sir, they're asking for your email if you can provide. Uh, and other than that, I think it was an amazing session. I think अब इसको वाइंड अप करते हैं. और जैसा कि मैंने शुरू में बताया था कि छाजाओ पे भी हम लोग यही सर्विस एक दूसरे अंदाज में एसएटीज और टेस्ट प्रेपरेशन के तरह के तौर पे वी प्रोवाइड दैट सर्विस, और उसके साथ ये कॉलेज काउंसलिंग, ये दोनों चीज़ें बहुत ज़रूरी हैं. If you take both of these things together, that is only, that will get you somewhere you want to. And like sir said, it's not important कि आप हार्वर्ड ही जाएं, या it's not important कि आप कहीं भी जाएं. It's important कि आप you give it your best shot, और जो भी काम आप कर लें उसके बाद आपको बस ये ना कहना पड़े कि अगर मैं ये कर लेता, अगर मैं वो कर लेता. ये चीज़ मेरा ख्याल है अगर आपकी तैयारी और मेहनत के बाद नहीं होती है तो इंशाल्लाह आसानी हो जाएगी. और बाकी ये कि अल्लाह से मांगते रहें ताकि चीज़ें आपकी आसान हो जाए. तो थैंक यू सो मच अब्दुलरहमान भाई, थैंक यू सो मच. और इंशाल्लाह आगे अगर कोई और इस तरह के
आपकी बात
सेशंस अगर होते हैं
दोहराना
तो वील
चाहूँगा।
डेफिनेटली वांट के यू कम ऑन बोर्ड विद अस. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर द सेशन टुडे.
ज़रूर, मैं आपकी बात दोहराना चाहूँगा,
जी
मुझे अच्छी
जी.
लगी। अब जो बाद में कहेंगे कि मैं काशी कर लेता, वो आप अभी कर लीजिए,
जी।
ठीक है ना, और छाजाओ के साथ कर लीजिए. I'm not in this business. I don't provide college counseling. Hamza is very good at what he does, and I support his work, and I'm here as his guest. राब्ते की जहाँ तक बात है, I'll discuss with you separately what the best way of staying in touch, inshallah, is. But I'm happy I was able to attend. अगर मैंने कोई गलत बात कही हो तो मैं माज़रत चाह लेता हूँ. जो फ़ायदा हो सके तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, अल्लाह का शुक्र है.
थैंक यू सो मच सर, थैंक यू, अल्लाह हाफिज.
अल्लाह हाफिज़.